The fact that newspapers have a political agenda, or at least political sympathies, is not a new thing. You can read the editorial pages of certain newspapers and clearly understand where their political opinions lie, especially if you read their opinion page. You can understand if the editorial policy of the newspaper is right of center, left of center, or whatever else descriptive terms you can use. Knowing that, reading newspapers is always a thing that is slightly tricky because you don't know if you're reading the news or somebody's perspective. Having said all of that, I came across a recent news article which talked about the situation in France, where the chief leader of the opposition, Marine Le Pen, is awaiting verdict in a case which might ban her from contesting the next presidential elections in France. While I was reading the article, I came across breaking news that she has in fact been banned for the elections and she has received an unfavorable verdict in the French court of law. In this video, we will talk about Marine Le Pen. The gravitational pull on France's political system of Marine Le Pen was hanging in the balance before the judges reached a verdict in the embezzlement trial she faced. Prosecutors were seeking a 5-year prison sentence and a 5-year ban from running for public office for Le Pen, a penalty that would exclude her from the next presidential race and thrust her party National Rally into limbo. The question that was looming over France was whether the Paris tribunal, regardless of the underlying facts of the case against Le Pen, should deliver a ruling that shakes the country's political order to its core. Le Pen said in an interview on national TV, "It's my political death that is being demanded, a very violent attack on democracy." Her anti immigration rhetoric has found growing support in France, positioning her as a frontrunner for the presidential elections in 2027 when President Emmanuel Macron will reach his limit of 2 consecutive terms. The idea of a court decision eliminating Le Pen from contention has triggered a national debate over the reach of France's fiercely independent judiciary branch. French prosecutors believe that no one, no matter their political status, should be above the law, but some of the country's most prominent politicians, including avowed opponents of Le Pen, worry that a ban would sow distrust in the French judicial system at a time when the institutions of France's modern republic are increasingly fragile. Gerald Darmanin, a former interior minister under Macron, who is expected to enter the 2027 race himself, wrote on X, formerly Twitter, that it would be deeply shocking if Marine Le Pen was deemed ineligible. Madame Le Pen must be fought at the ballot box, not elsewhere. Supporters and opponents of Le Pen alike see parallels between her and the legal jeopardy that President Donald Trump faced before his election. Some have suggested Le Pen should adopt Donald Trump's playbook, using the trial to fuel anti-establishment sentiment and fire up her base. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a Le Pen ally, publicly reminded her that being harassed by the judiciary was a crucial step toward victory for Trump. Disqualifying Le Pen would likely add to growing criticism from top Trump administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, that Europe's mainstream politicians and institutions are throttling democracy in the name of saving it from far right parties. Vance and Musk have criticized Romania's courts for overturning the result of a first round presidential ballot won by a far right nationalist candidate on the grounds of Russian interference. They have also criticized Germany's mainstream parties for their refusal to form any kind of coalition with the country's second biggest party, the far right AfD. Prosecutors allege Le Pen and dozens of other members of her party illegally used 4.5 million euros or about 4.8 million American dollars in European Union funds that were earmarked for assistance helping lawmakers in the European Parliament with their work. Instead, prosecutors allege Le Pen and her lawmakers used the money to pay party staffers who were not involved in work for the parliament. Le Pen has denied the allegations, testifying in court it was appropriate for the assistants to perform other party related work because they were political aides, not direct employees of the European Parliament. After prosecutors requested the ban, Le Pen was defiant, telling a TV interviewer that this feeling of revolt that I feel deeply, millions of French people feel it too. Le Pen has questioned prosecutors' impartiality, but she has stopped short of scorched earth tactics like attacking court officials over social media or calling for their resignation. Doing so would interfere with her decade long effort to de demonize her far right party's image, said Jean-Pierre Camus, the co director of the Observatory of Radical Politics at the Jean Jaurès Foundation, a Paris based think tank. There is an Observatory of Radical Politics in Paris. Marine Le Pen doesn't want to appear as following in Trump's footsteps, Camus said. Since taking over the party from her father, Le Pen has focused on turning the page on National Rally's history of anti Semitism and on demonstrating that she and her ranks are ready to govern. The strategy has broadened the party's appeal, allowing National Rally to make historic gains in parliamentary elections last summer. National Rally won 125 seats in France's National Assembly, making it the single biggest party in the lower house. The National Assembly is virtually paralyzed, fractured between three blocks of parties that are ideologically opposed to each other. The chamber barely passed an annual budget to keep France's government operating. Le Pen and her lawmakers have positioned themselves to hold the balance of power between Macron's pro-business allies and a leftist coalition that ranges from the Socialist Party to France Unbowed, the party of far-left firebrand Jean-Luc Mélenchon. The political crisis would be aggravated without any benefit to society if Le Pen were banned, Mélenchon wrote on X. Mélenchon has been critical of prosecutors' request to have the ban applied to Le Pen immediately instead of allowing the penalty to remain suspended, as Le Pen's prison sentence would be, while any appeals are underway. Exhausting the appeals process can take years in France, meaning Le Pen would remain ineligible to run for office while higher courts review her case. Prosecutors' request to bar Le Pen from office relies on a 2016 anti-corruption law that says any politician convicted of misusing public funds should face a ban from running for office again. Prosecutors say that law does not prevent Le Pen from serving out the remainder of her term as a lawmaker in France's National Assembly. Prosecutors have also asked the court to impose a fine of 300,000 euros on Le Pen. Prosecutors have argued in court that they must apply the 2016 law regardless of its impact on France's democratic life. Judges ruling in the case, prosecutors said, are not obligated to accommodate the defendant's presidential ambitions. There is no illegitimate interference by the judiciary in public and political life, Nicolas Barré, one of the prosecutors, told judges in court. Le Pen's lawyers have argued that the 2016 law should not apply to her because all the parliamentary assistants were hired under contracts that ended before the law came into force in December of that year. Prosecutors say the court should take into account reimbursements and other payments the lawmakers received under the contracts as late as 2017. Le Pen hired, among others, her father's bodyguard Thierry Légier and her chief of staff and former sister-in-law Catherine Grisset as parliamentary assistants during her tenure as a European lawmaker from 2004 to 2017. If the court bans Le Pen from running in 2027, the political spotlight is likely to swing toward her protege, Jordan Bardella, the party's 29-year-old president. Bardella is a member of the European Parliament, but he has limited experience in national politics. He spearheaded the party's campaign during the snap elections that Macron called last summer for the National Assembly. National Rally won more than a fifth of the seats in the lower house, its biggest haul ever, but it underperformed polls indicating the party was within reach of scoring a majority. Asked in a recent TV interview whether he would run for president if Le Pen was disqualified, Bardella said, "She won't be ineligible, so I don't ask myself this question. This hypothesis is completely crazy. Marine Le Pen was found guilty of misusing European Union funds. She was sentenced to prison and she was banned from France's next presidential election.